Our latest CM plugin is a fully featured cross-platform analysis and metering toolkit from legendary sample label and plugin brand Vengeance-Sound. Here's Scope. Observe your signal's waveforms in real time with the plugin's flexible oscilloscope. Perform detailed frequency analysis with its comprehensive spectrum analyzer. And 3D sonogram. Monitor your track's stereo field and phase using its detailed stereo metering section. And employ in-depth peak, average, dynamic range and K-system metering throughout your sessions. Scope CM comes in a variety of formats for both PC and Mac. VST2, VST3, AU and AAX, in 32 and 64-bit. Previously only available to Vengeance-Sound customers, computer music readers can get this plugin for free with issue 216 onwards. It's the perfect all-in-one sonic microscope for your tracks, buses and master output. So let's take a closer look. Once installed, open a new 126 BPM project in any host and load Scope as an insert on the master channel. We're going to use the plugin to monitor a series of audio files, which you'll find in the tutorial files folder. We're starting with beat126bpm.wav. Drop the file onto a new audio track and loop up the groove. Scope doesn't generate or process audio, but instead provides several ways to monitor and meter different aspects of your signals. The plugin's 3 analysis sections, Scope, Spectrum and Stereo Field, can be switched between by toggling the corresponding button at the top of the interface. The detailed level meter permanently sits to the plugin's left side. Its faded bouncing bars represent instantaneous peak level. Hover your mouse over the meter to show the highest peak value in dB. And the short solid white bars represent longer-term RMS level, the averaging window or snapshot length of which can be changed from between 10 milliseconds to 1 second with the RMS length dial. Dynamic range, labelled DR, is the difference between peak and RMS and is displayed at the bottom of the meters. If your signal is too quiet or loud to analyse efficiently, use the input gain dial to change the plugin's global gain resolution. When your signal breaches 0 dB, various indicators light up red to indicate clipping, and the number of samples exceeding this point are displayed at the top of the meters. The metering mode knob changes the metering type between peak, histogram, and 3 K metering modes, K12, K14 and K20. Make sure you have the Scope section open. As the beat plays, observe the waveform, rendered in real time on Scope's oscilloscope display, which plots the input signal vertically across a horizontal time value, featuring a tempo sync scale displayed along the top, and millisecond values along the bottom. Hover your mouse over the display and a dB value is shown on a horizontal line, so you can measure waveform gain at different points. You can customize how the input signal's channels are displayed using the channel mode dial. Left and right shows both left and right channels in tandem. Left only and right only isolate the respective channels. Both channels can be viewed as a mono mix. And the max setting displays the louder sample of the left or right channel, giving you a better idea of overall level in signals that have a strong stereo component, which can typically go in and out of phase constantly, signals such as double track guitars, stereo unison synths, and so on. In this mode, you still see a signal even if your left and right channels are out of phase. The 3 smaller centre dials in the Scope section allow us to zoom in on our waveform in various ways. By default, the sync mode is set to free, meaning we can scale our time axis freely between 10 milliseconds and 30 seconds, without the display resyncing. Turn the bottom visible time knob left to 2000 milliseconds, or as with any parameter, double click on the knob and type in the value to zoom in closer to our beats waveform. Now change sync mode to transient. The oscilloscope display is now re-triggered from the point of each transient. Set visible time to 400 milliseconds, zooming in further. Changing sync mode to beat time synchronises the time axis with your project's tempo, scalable via both the sync duration and duration multiplier knob. Now mute the beats channel and drop sine wave C1.wav onto a new audio track. By setting Scope's sync mode to pitch, selecting C1 using the sync duration knob, and changing visible time to duration times 1, we can observe one single cycle of our C1 sine wave. Now change sync mode to frequency and set sync duration to the frequency of C1, which is 65.4 Hz. And again, we can see a single wave cycle of our note. The final sync mode, time, is the same as free mode, except the window re-triggers after the amount of time set by the visible time knob. Mute the sine waves channel and unmute the beats. Various toggle buttons give you further control over the display. Freeze scope, unsurprisingly, freezes the display at its current point. Transients marks the transients in the waveform. And the male S and female S buttons highlight problematic sibilance frequencies. And the male S and female S buttons highlight problematic sibilance frequencies. And the male S and female S buttons highlight problematic sibilance frequencies. And the male S and female S buttons highlight problematic sibilance frequencies. And the male S and female S buttons highlight problematic sibilance frequencies. Let's add some bass and music over our drum groove. Load bass 126 bpm.wav onto a new audio channel. Then open Scope's spectrum analysis section by hitting the spectrum button at the top. Displayed as a graph, the horizontal axis is frequency, with bass to the left and treble to the right, and the vertical position gives the amplitude of those frequencies. Hover your mouse over the kick and bass's fundamental frequencies in turn. Note that they occupy their own frequency areas. The peak reset parameter, i.e. hold or release, determines the amount of time peaks in the frequency curve's background shadow curve will be held. From an infinite hold setting through to a 48 dB per second drop in the curve signal over time. As before, the display can be frozen with the Freeze Spectrum button. The graph's display can be switched to a linear scale. And untoggling the Draw Line switch will remove the smooth line of best fit to display the frequency curve as separate bands, the number of which is set using the Num Bands knob that becomes active. Toggling the Draw Waterfall button switches off the traditional 2D view and renders a real-time 3D spectrogram of our signal, plotting frequency and gain across the time domain. The graph can be rotated with the Rotate knob, and the projector parameter moves the vertical gain scale throughout the rendered waveform at a user-defined frequency. Now head over to the stereo field section. Our left-right meters can still be seen on the plugin's left, but an adjacent meter now also displays values for the mid and side signals alongside. Over to the right, our frequency analyzer, or 3D spectrogram information, depending on which is selected, is observed on two windows, one for the mid signal and the other for the side signal. These sections' parameters still remain to hand at the bottom of the plugin. In the centre of the stereo field section is a detailed stereo phase meter, plotting mono information as a line down the centre and stereo information out to the edges. The bottom anti-phase, or correlation meter, plots the similarity and difference between the left and right channels on its horizontal meter. +1 is fully mono, and -1 is fully stereo. So, now you've seen the power of Scope, head off and investigate the huge array of commercial plugins Vengeance Sound have to offer. The Vengeance Producer Suite Essential FX Bundle 2, scoring 9 out of 10 in our CM214 edition, is home to 15 workhorse and creative effects such as Multiband Transient Designer, Time Freeze, Vinylizer, and more. Glitch Bitch is ideal for stuttering and mangling your audio. And Phalanx is their flagship drum and synth sampler. Check out all these and more at www.vengeance-sound.com.
Download over 30 exclusive plugins. Get hundreds of pro-quality samples and power up your production skills with in-depth tutorials. We break it down for you step by step, and you'll see exactly how it's done in expert video guides and producer masterclass sessions with pro producers. Get all this and more with Computer Music Magazine every month on iPad and iPhone, PC and Mac, Android, and in print.